move the table.
Just this.
No, you can't see it because the camera's on the way. You have to move the camera.
Oops. Bear with us. We're having technical
We're
difficulties.
here!
Having technical difficulties.
Turn the camera around.
Yep. Maybe.
Reverse the camera.
Well, we can't see the picture then. That's
just
weird.
reverse it. It's got
So
a
it's
reverse button.
there. There we go.
Yeah.
Apologies for that, for the two people that are watching. We're having fun with our computer.
Hello!
Let's go. Right, I'm going to come on here. You chat. I'm going to get on
Our
my
Facebook
computer.
let us down again. So we're on our phone, so we're very small today. So welcome everybody. This is the John Radcliffe, and we're the infant feeding team, and we are in one of the side rooms on level 5 on the postnatal ward today. And we're here for up to an hour if we've got that many questions. And we'd love to hear from anyone that has got any questions, any anecdotal things, any things that they have been through that have found helpful, not helpful, anything that you would like to talk about today. We've now been doing this for about 14 weeks, so we're becoming quite familiar, I think, to a few people. And we're getting some really good feedback on the wards now from the mums that have had their babies, saying that they found them very helpful. But we'd like to know if you're finding us helpful, and if you'd like to know anything that we can go through with you about any aspects of feeding. Let us know if you can see us and if you can hear us, and let's talk about anything that you would like to think about, you know.
Think about talking about
so
sleepy babies, weren't we?
Yeah, so you know, it's quite warm at the moment. It's summer months, and babies are quite warm, as are mums. And I think when you start doing skin to skin, you find that your baby becomes very warm, and you become very warm, and your baby becomes quite slippery because you're sweating quite a lot, aren't you? And it becomes quite difficult. And I think we're going to have another hot week next week. It looks like it's going to get a bit better. So what do you do with a sleepy baby? You know, have you found some things that have helped you when you've been with your baby at home and worried about whether it's waking up? But we're finding lots of babies are sleeping for a lot longer, and mums are finding that it's quite hard to get their babies to feed. So what do you do? So it depends on obviously how old your baby is, and newborn babies are quite sleepy anyway in the first week. Certainly they, some babies are very, very sleepy, and that's just how they are post-delivery, and they may have had medicated births, so they've got more medication on board, and it can take 2 or 3 days for that medication to wear off a little bit, as you find when you've had your baby that you are very sleepy and exhausted following the birth that you've had. So you know, it's really important that you still stimulate your breasts. That's the most important thing, and also that you do skin to skin even if you're warm and your baby is sleepy, because that will be the one thing that wakes your baby up and gives it the cues. If you put your baby away from you in a cot with a sheet over it, it's not going to wake up in the same way. So having your baby close to you, think about all mammals, and think about, you know, monkeys. They have their babies with them all the time. They never let go. And your baby's hands are all curled up like that because they're holding on to fur that we used to have hundreds of millions of years ago. And so that hasn't gone. Those babies are still little monkey babies, and they hold on to they're holding on. So that's what your baby's doing. And they want to be with you. They want to be able to smell you. They want to be able to hear your heartbeat, and they want to be able to know that they're close and safe. And that's very important for their development, for brain growth, but also for milk production. And so even if your baby is very sleepy, you can still make sure that your baby gets enough food. So certainly in the first 2 or 3 days, you should be hand expressing frequently. So, you know, 8 to 10 times in a day if you can. The more you do it, the more skill you have, and the more milk you'll make. The more you practice, particularly if you're in the hospital, the more help you'll get, because you've had that, you know, if you've come a cropper with something, the staff on the ward can answer your questions and go through things with you. If you don't do it very much, then you're not going to know what your problems or what your questions might be. So it's really important, and we've talked about this every single week since we started, 14 weeks, about protecting your milk supply and making sure that you secure it, and that you calibrate your milk supply for 2 weeks' time, for 3 months' time, and that's what this is doing. As soon as you've had your baby, the clock starts to tick, and you've got a 2-week window where you've got really ultimate time where you can tap into your hormone levels and your receptors in your breasts that will produce milk. So the more you are doing that, the more you're stimulating. Even if your baby is sleepy, you know that you can get more colostrum out and you can give your baby more calories, and they may well wake up. And what you find is it's a bit like having a Mars bar. When you're feeling a bit hypo, you perk up. And so if you get calories, your baby might well then wake up and feed. So you might express a little bit of colostrum. It might be 0.2 of a mil, it might be half a mil, it might be 5 mils. All of that is normal in the early days.
Do you want to explain what hypo is quickly?
Oh yes,
those
sorry.
Who don't know.
So if your blood sugar level drops, so if you get shaky after you've had if you've been out and had a run or something, or you've been out for a walk, or you've missed a meal, your blood sugar level drops, and so you have a Mars bar to perk yourself up a bit, to give yourself an instant hit, and or you have something more nutritious, whatever, banana, it builds your blood sugar level back up, and you start to then feel a bit better, and then you might think about having something proper to eat and have a good meal once you feel better, but you can't think of anything else other than just having a bit of quick fix calories. So it's important that if your baby has been very sleepy and it hasn't been feeding because it's very sleepy, that you just keep adding to that calorie level of your baby. So in the early days, your baby will have a counter-regulation, so it's got lots of fat all over its body. So your baby, if it's a normal healthy term baby, will have lovely chunky arms and round the back of its neck, and its bottom and its legs will be all chunky and lovely, and that's fat reserves. And if they don't get calories very much in the early days, they burn the fat that's on them, and that feeds their brain as much as the calories do. However, as your milk starts to become transitional, so it changes from colostrum to mature milk, so that's after about 48 hours onwards for some mums. Certainly by 3 days you should have transitional milk going into mature milk. Your baby will switch that counter-regulation off, and they will stop burning that fat. So in the early days they are okay getting small amounts of food, because the fat burning will also balance with the calories that your baby's getting. So it's really important that they keep getting calories, but if you haven't got large volumes, they are okay until you have got large volumes. You come a cropper if you start introducing more food to your baby before that counter-regulation period stops. So if on day 2 or day 1 you want to give it extra food, once you've done that, you've got to keep giving that food, because they don't control their blood sugar levels in the same way, so the babies become hungry more quickly. So it's really important that you just protect your baby's counter-regulation, and you just keep giving it lots of little bits of colostrum that you've hand expressed, and you do lots of skin to skin.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you're increasing your milk supply, you're putting the order in, you're switching everything on, plugging it in, and you're calibrating your milk supply for later when you need it. And that has to be done yesterday, not tomorrow. So when you're tired, you have to do it yesterday, and that doesn't stop. You have to keep doing it even if you're tired. And babies, if they're not feeding, if they were feeding, they might be feeding 10 times a day. And so you might have a baby that's sleepy and not waking up for feeds, but you still need to do that stimulation. You can't just leave your baby for 6 hours and not give it anything if it's sleepy all the time. Babies are okay for a little while to be left, and certainly on day 1 or day 0, they might only need three feeds in 24 hours on the first day they're born, because they're burning fat as well as their calories. But after that, you have to start feeding your babies regularly, and that starts to wake them up, and it starts to make them less sleepy. And the drugs that they've had in labour will start to wear off. The exhaustion from the birth will start to recover as you start to feel better, but you still have to keep producing that stimulation, so that you can give your babies lots and lots of little tiny bits of very, very high calorie colostrum, which is really beneficial for them, and starts the production. So when they're really ready for milk, which they will be by day 3, they will get it, and then they'll be happy, and your skills will be there. You got anything to add?
No, I think that you've covered it comprehensively. I think we'll say some hellos now. So Tasha said hello, so nice and early on, and she's told us she's having a 12-week scan tomorrow. Good luck with that. Hope that goes well. Elizabeth said, thank you for being so awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth.
I like that.
Michelina, who I remember her name from last week, said yes, she can hear and see us, which is good because you would have seen my head was down. I've got my laptop trying to check the messages because we can't read them over there, and I couldn't see us, so I was wondering if you could. So I'm really glad you've said that. Tasha said she could hear us too. Imi has said, silly question, I'm sure it isn't. What would I express into? A bottle? Well, it depends when you're expressing. So if you're expressing in the early days, as Naomi's just been saying, colostrum is tiny weeny amounts, and we tend to use tiny weeny syringes or even just a teaspoon. So, we're talking really small amounts. So if you're expressing when it's colostrum, it's going to be something tiny. And when you get on to mature milk, you go transitional and then mature milk, yes, you'll be going into a bottle by then. So the volumes go up and up and up really quickly.
Almost double the volume each day. Once your milk starts to come in, you might get 5 mils the first time you start to express, and then the next time you might find you've got 15, and then the next time you might get 30, and then the next time you might get 60, or you might get much slower response, but quite often it's very quick. And actually, if you talk about volumes, we sort of aim to get about 750 mils by day 10 a day. Now that might sound a lot, but actually that's only 10 feeds of 75 mils in 24 hours, which is actually not very much when you break it down when your baby's a little bit older. So actually, if you think about it like that, it's not a huge amount, and certainly 750 mils to a litre is what most women will produce in a 24-hour period, and that might sound absolutely huge amount if you've never had a baby before, and if you're struggling a little bit, it might be very daunting that we've said that, but actually that's where we come in and we support you, and that's why it's so important to go back to that day naught and protect your milk supply, skin to skin and hand express, because that secures that volume at 10 days if you get really good frequent stimulation of breast milk.
I think the other thing to add to that as well is that it's regardless of breast size. So people think that people with larger breasts produce more milk and people with smaller breasts produce less milk. They don't. Over a 24-hour period, a woman with larger or smaller breasts will produce a similar amount of milk. The lady with the larger breast just perhaps has a bit more storage capacity. So it might be that a mother with slightly smaller breasts might just feed more frequently, but that's not necessarily a big issue. Jill has asked us, should she start hand expressing before birth? Can colostrum only be hand expressed? We would recommend colostrum is hand expressed because it's such teeny weeny amounts. It's like golden syrup. It collects in little droplets on the end of the nipple that we would catch and pick up with either a syringe or a spoon. And then it builds up and builds up. So using a pump, you tend to lose it. It gets stuck all around the pump bits.
Very sticky and thick.
Really like golden syrup. So yes, we would definitely be saying hand express because you would lose it in the pump. And should you express before? That's up to you. If you've got any risk factors, if you happen to be a mother who has diabetes, then we would be recommending that you express in advance. So you've got some additional milk for your baby, because mothers who have diabetes and have their babies, their blood sugars will be checked after their babies are born. So they often need, quite frequently will need a little bit more. So having some extra milk is useful. It's quite useful to know how to hand express before you have a baby. Learn that skill before the baby comes. That's always a good thing too, but there is no obligation on you to express unless there's a particular need. So have a chat with your midwife, ask her if it's going to be beneficial. Learning how to do it is good. Whether you do a lot of it and collect it is another matter. So have a chat with your midwife.
From about 37 weeks.
Yeah, 37 weeks onwards now. Kate has come. Hello Kate, we know you. She said, hello Alex and Naomi. You've both been so helpful through my feeding journey and these sessions are great. She spoke to you yesterday, Naomi, for some advice, and she forgot to ask about diet. I generally have a varied diet, healthy diet, lots of fruit and veg, and have lots of advice from friends about foods I should be eating or shouldn't be eating. Do you have any guidance on this? Thanks.
Eat what you like.
Yes.
Eat what you like, absolutely. The more varied your diet, the more varied your baby's flavours will be in the breast milk, and they'll be more likely to accept very varied flavours when you start weaning. It's much more normal to them to have different flavoured foods. So yes, you can eat whatever you like. You'll find things that may make your baby a bit squirmy, but that might be that they make you a bit squirmy as well, and so you might find that it has the same effect. So try it and see, you know, and if you're not sure if it was that or not, you could always take it away for 2 weeks and reintroduce it and try it again. But normally we say you can eat anything.
Yeah, no forbidden food.
So nice spicy foods, nice chilies, lots of sweet, lots of fruits, lots of garlic. I mean, all of those things are fantastic if that's what you like. So yeah, absolutely.
Comments coming in thick and fast now.
Good.
My laptop's saying there's 8 to go. Paula Cockaway, I think we've met you before. Hello, thank you for ongoing support. Her baby's now 12 weeks old, her little girl. She's continuously feeding since she was born. She's had a problem with fast flow, and now she's wondering how to reduce the amount of milk in her breast. I've got too much milk, and every time before breastfeeding I have to express 20 to 40 mils because my little one is not able to drink it due to very fast milk flow. She's drinking always from one breast for about 5 to 10, and she's putting on weight perfectly. Well done, and having too much milk is a problem in its own right as well. We totally feel for you on that. It can be quite challenging to deal with. We normally say to try and gradually just reduce how much you're taking out, and the body will calibrate. So I don't know when you last tried her without taking milk off beforehand, because she's quite old now, she's 3 months, so she may cope better with that fast letdown than she was coping previously. So it might be just trying to take off slightly less and seeing how you get on. I mean, as a bigger baby, they tend to cope with the flow better. So you may find that you don't need to express beforehand, and you just put her to the breast, and you only express if you become particularly full. But see how you get on.
If you keep asking for it to be made, it'll keep being made, but if you do something different, it might reduce it.
Try and reduce
something like a hacker might help as well. You know, for the other side, you might be able to collect milk and, you know, just to soften the nipple a little bit around it, you could try a little something like that. If she's really struggling and you can't not pump, you might find something like a hacker, which is like a little bulb which you put on your nipple before a feed or during a feed on one side, and it collects dripped milk, and that just softens around the edge of the nipple to make it easier to attach. Sometimes people find that quite helpful as well, but it does increase milk supply as well, so don't overuse it, and you might just want to use it as a breast. It is called a breast reliever, it's not a breast pump. It is there to relieve the breasts, but if you do keep doing it, it will keep producing it. So
Paula, I mean, do give us a shout, you know, phone us up, we'll have a chat with you on the phone about it and talk you through. But I think it's a case of trying to take off less and maybe try and let your daughter do the work and see what happens after that, because she may cope now. Louise has said she's coming in for induction tomorrow, and she's expressed some colostrum syringes. How many should I bring with me? Well, firstly, bring them in a cool bag, please, with some ice blocks. I know that's adding to the luggage that you're bringing in, but we do have some issues with them going into fridges and freezers, so we'd much rather you keep it with you. It's fine defrosted once it's defrosted for up to 12 hours, so if you could perhaps just bring in a few. I don't know how you say you've got plenty, and obviously remember there's more where it came from, you'll be able to express again afterwards. So I don't know,
maybe one or two.
Yeah, bring a few.
No more than that, and then your partner can always come back.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like they get him to bring some more back.
And now there's visiting on the day, if you're not going home, or the day that you've delivered, your partners can visit for an hour now by appointment. So you know, he can come back up with them if necessary.
So yeah, so bring too many in and bring them in a cool box, please.
Yeah. You don't know how long your labour's going to be, so it might be 2 or 3 days before you get into established labour. It might be within 2 hours.
Don't frighten her.
I'm not going to frighten her. You might just be niggling, you know, and you might not go into labour straight away. I mean, the plan is that you will do that, but you know what you don't want to do, and it's the same if you're in, not necessarily an induction, but if you're in early labour, you might have a long latent phase where you're just you know, getting things nice and ripe and ready to go, and you might think, oh, it's time to go in and bring it and defrost it all, and then forget that you've taken it out of the freezer and it defrosts, and then you've got to use it. So you know, think about that. If this is not just for an induction, this is for anybody that's coming in, just bring a tiny bit in, because you don't know how long you're going to be on the labour ward for. And it might be that it gets wasted, and that does sometimes happen.
That's heartbreaking.
It's really heartbreaking. You've worked really hard to get that colostrum collection.
So Vanessa's on the same theme. She says she's fine. First, she says thanks. Said the video's been very useful. I'm glad they are. If you're expressing, do you need to sterilise the bottles in the same way as you do with formula? No, you don't. The thing with breast milk is it's a live product, it fights off bacteria, it's got all sorts of anti-infective properties in it. So just good washing, hot soapy water, rinse in hot water and dry with a clean tea towel or paper towel. If you have a dishwasher, you can put it in the dishwasher. So you don't need to sterilise things that only come into contact with breast milk. When mums are mixed feeding and they're using bottles and teats for formula milk as well, they do need to be sterilised. Anything that comes into contact with formula milk needs to be sterilised. Anything that only comes into contact with breast milk does not need to be sterilised. Saves you a lot of time and effort. So I hope that's a good answer.
And also, if you are using syringes, you shouldn't be giving formula or mature breast milk, so only colostrum should be given in syringes to babies. That's the other thing just to mention that as well, that you should just be giving colostrum in a syringe. That anything else, mature or formula, should be given either via bottle or a cup or finger feeding. So just make sure that you're not giving your baby 20 mils of formula in a syringe or 20 mils of breast milk in a syringe because you don't want to give a bottle. It's not the best way. We worry that babies aren't suckling properly and they may breathe the milk in. So it's a real risk for a baby if it suddenly cries and it's got a mouthful of milk. So just the colostrum, which is tiny amounts and very, very thick and sticks to the coat, around the surface of the mouth. So the baby doesn't go anywhere other than just the baby sort of sucks on it and it swallows the small volumes.
Okay, Alejandra has come with, my baby's 2 weeks old, I hope I said that right, old, and she had a lot of problems with jaundice and she'd been having to give formula top-ups. But now she's trying to exclusively breastfeed him, and she noticed that when he's feeding, he sucks and swallows very actively for the first 5 minutes, and after that she doesn't hear him sucking quite so much. He starts to fall asleep at the breast and she has to keep waking him up, but I don't see him swallow. So he's getting sleepy at the breast, I think is what you're saying, isn't it?
Is he gaining weight? That's the next thing. How is his weight gain? What is he reaching? What we're expecting him to reach on what he's doing already? And if he isn't, have you seen anybody about it? I think.
And his poos and wheeze, another good indicator. And is he doing enough poos and wheeze? I don't know if you said how old he was now. 2 weeks. So we'd still be expecting at minimum 2 yellow stools daily and 6 heavy wet nappies daily. If he's not doing that, then we'd like to have a chat with your midwives if you're still under the midwives.
As far as the sleepiness goes, if after 5 minutes and you think that he's not actually getting enough, you're quite right. You're talking about the 4 reliable signs of milk transfer, and we've said this many times on these sessions. So the first one is suckling and swallowing, and you've told us that he suckles and swallows initially and then he shuts down and goes to sleep. The next one is peeing and pooing, so those are really important, and you've told us that he's doing that. Yeah, and the weight is the last one, so that's the 4th one. So if you're not quite happy with his suckling and swallowing, it might be that you do need to change what you're doing a little bit. And one of the things that we talk about a lot on here is also switch and compression. So switch feeding is where you put your baby, I don't know if you can see me here. Yeah. So with switch feeding, you feed your baby on this side, and your baby will suckle, fall asleep, and then you'll do some compression. So compression is holding your breast when your baby's suckling. So as he's a bit more sleepy, you'll start to go as far back to your chest wall as you can, and you hold. You're not pumping, you're holding and squeezing. And then you will wait for your baby, look at what your baby's doing with the suckling and swallowing. As soon as they shut down again, and when they shut down, they shut their eyes and they stop suckling. You go back to this side, you go onto this side, and you do the same on that side. And you repeat the same, you do some suckling, watch what your baby's doing, transferring milk, you compress again, and then when your baby shuts down, you go back to this side. And you do this quite quickly, and your baby gets very cross because you're taking them off, but it wakes them up. And each time you do this, they're transferring milk, so they're nutritively feeding, they're getting food all the time throughout the feed, and you go back, and you might get 10. You might get 5 on each one, you might get 10 on each one. But what happens is that the switching becomes more frequent as you're feeding. And so a lot of people will say, oh, well, we've been told we shouldn't be doing that because it means the baby's not getting the right mix of milk. But actually this is sort of advanced breastfeeding. This is the best tool that you can have as a mother to actually get your baby to increase the flow of milk and this will increase by compressing. It's stimulating letdowns. It's like pumping while you're breastfeeding. So you're stimulating milk production, and your baby is actually nutritively suckling. You might find that your baby's feeding for an hour at a time, but actually only getting 5 minutes worth of food, but nibbling the rest of the time. And this is another good reason to do compression and switch. So that might be the first level. If your baby is starting to be a bit sleepy, start to think about switching and compressing, and do that for 48 hours. Maybe 4 days, if your baby will let you do it. Sometimes they say, stop now, I'm not having this anymore, and they will just refuse and get upset. So go back to just feeding in the normal way, but do it for about up to 4 days if you need to do it that long. And you should start to see that your breasts are filling. And you should also start to see, when you're doing this, that they actually suckle for longer, and you're switching much less frequently. And then eventually you'll find that your baby's actually feeding well on one side, and then we'll take a drink on the other side. So it's a really, really good tool for you to have in your toolbox that requires no input from anyone else. You can make that decision yourself, and you can do that. So if you feel your baby's a little bit hungry, then, you know, or not engaged in the feeding in the same way, you can start to do some switching and compressing yourself. And you can do compressing on one side and just stay on one side, and that will increase the volumes. You'll see how your baby is actually suckling more deeply and swallowing more effectively when you're doing compressions. And that might be that you do it towards the end of the feed, when your baby stops feeding quite so vigorously. You can start to do some compressions, and you might suddenly see that they start glugging again when they've had another letdown. What you might find is that you don't feel a letdown, and that's very, very normal. In fact, most women don't feel a letdown. So when somebody says, do you feel your milk let down? Don't worry if you say no, because most women don't feel their baby, the milk let down when the baby's suckling. All they see is their baby swallowing more deeply and more frequently, and then it'll start to glug again and wake up, and its eyes will open a little bit more. But it's a very effective tool. You'll find that quite helpful. So try that first, and if you're still struggling and your baby's still not effectively transferring milk, and he's not gaining weight, then you need to be talking to us. So give us a phone call, and we can talk through more personally to you and your own particular problem.
Okay. 14 questions apparently. Winding up. We're getting busy. I'll just further back. So Lisa said her baby's nearly 4 weeks old, and in the day the baby wants to feed every hour for about 4 hours. But then will go longer at times. Is this cluster feeding? Does this mean he's not getting enough on a feed? Also, I was told when babies are little to not let them go more than 4 hours without feeding, but at night sometimes he sleeps for 4.5, and I worry if he goes over the 4. So first of all, I would enjoy the 4.5. And that might be why he's doing the internet.
We've got it back.
Yeah, brilliant. We went down for a second. That might be why he's doing some periods of time where he's feeding more frequently, because sometimes what happens is, well, if you think about a 24-hour period, a baby needs a finite amount of milk in that 24-hour period, regardless of at what sort of intervals they take it. So some babies some parts of the day and less at other parts of the day. So I think the internet keeps dropping out on us. Apologies for that. So it isn't uncommon to have a period of time when a baby feeds for off on for a period of time. 4 hours is quite long though. A couple of hours would be really normal. 4 hours does seem quite long. I think it asks the question, how's your baby doing? Are you getting enough poos and wees? Is your baby gaining weight? Is everything else all right? If everything else is all right, then we wouldn't be worried.
You're getting a break in the rest of the day.
Yeah, so what we don't want to hear is a baby that's constantly at the breast. We do want to know that you do get breaks, and it is normal that some babies will feed in quick succession for a period of time and then bigger gaps at other times. But your 4.5 hours I would revel and enjoy and not worry about, really.
They usually make up for it for a couple of feeds close together in the night after that, when they've had that long bit of sleep. So you'll enjoy that bit, as Alex has said.
I think we're freezing looking at my screen here. Hopefully you can hear us. So once Livy's asked, once the colostrum has been hand expressed and put into a syringe before birth, do you freeze and then bring it into hospital? So yes, pop it in the freezer and bring it in frozen with a freezer in a freezer bag. So I'm just aware that on my screen it's frozen. So
let us know if you can hear us.
On the subject of frozen, I'll have to go to the bottom of the messages and see if it's frozen, if anyone's saying anything. not saying. So shall we carry on?
We'll just carry on and hope you can see us.
Yeah. So we've seen that question and that one. That was Lisa. So I think Lisa, hopefully we reassured you, and as long as all other parameters are okay. It does appear to have frozen on my screen. So Jill has asked, does the hospital provide the syringes? Yes, we can. So let us know if you need syringes. Your community midwife can organise for some for you, or we can pop some in the post to you, but yes, we can sort that out for you. It doesn't have to be a syringe, any small container, as long as it's good and clean.
Could be an ice cube tray, a little ice cube tray is fine. You can wash that with soapy water and then put it in a freezer bag, and just put your colostrum into those little freezer blocks, and then you can push those out and defrost them as well.
I'm going to thank Hannah, Michelina and Camilla for telling us that they can hear us and see us. It's just my screen then. Very disconcerting.
We switched off twice,
frozen on my screen.
Confused us.
Yes, let's go back to so that was Jill's question. We've answered that one. Vicky has said her baby's 2 weeks old, and today, congratulations. And sometimes when I'm trying to feed, she squirms, wriggles, and cries, even though it's right in front of her. Also, she tends to just feed for 10 minutes at a time, but all the time. So, she's feeding the whole way through the 10 minutes. Brilliant, that's good news.
So she's glugging and transferring milk.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we say a feed can be anywhere between 5 and 40 minutes. So if she's effectively removing milk and transferring it well, 5 minutes could be fine for some babies. 10 minutes might be just perfect for your baby. So as long as she's doing everything else she needs to do, we wouldn't worry about how long she's at the breast, as long as she's doing what she needs to do.
And offer the other side if you're worried. Always offer the other side. You've got 2 breasts, you've got 3 breasts, you know, you can go back to the other one again. So always make sure that you give her the option to have more, even if you think she's quite full. She might take another feed from the other breast after a little burp or something. And then, is she gaining weight? That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It goes back to the 4 reliable signs. If she's doing the suckling and swallowing, she should be peeing and pooing, and her weight should be going up.
And you said about her squirming and wriggling and crying. They do sometimes. You think it's right in front of you. What more do you need? You have a great big arrow. It's here. But sometimes they do. Hopefully she sorts it out though and works out that it's obviously she is feeding, because you're saying she is feeding. It should get easier. I mean, she's only 2 weeks old, so she's still learning. It's a learnt skill for both of you. So hopefully things will get easier. And mothers who are feeding older babies will tell you they literally just attach themselves and don't need any help. Make sure you are giving her that opportunity to come in, because sometimes I think mums expect babies to make their way to the breast, but actually much as self-attachment is something, if you're feeding your baby in the cross-cradle position, you do need to physically push her to the breast, quite firmly, more firmly than I think most people think. Yeah, so you really need to make a real gesture of bringing her in, so she needs to come in, so make sure she's doing that. So, okay, hopefully that's answered your question, Vicky. Hannah has said she's 37 weeks and been advised to start collecting colostrum. She's been trying for 3 days, nothing. I'll continue to try, but does it matter if I don't produce anything? The likelihood is you may at some point, but it's no reflection on your milk supply going forward. Just keep trying, and it's worth having a look at videos to see how it's done, and just make sure the technique's as good as you can get it. It's all good stimulation anyway.
You could always check with your midwife when you have your next appointment, just check that you're doing it correctly. I know it might feel a bit strange taking your breast out in front of your midwife before you've had your baby, but it might just reassure you that your technique is good, because sometimes it can just be a little bit maybe you're not quite firm enough, or your hands aren't quite in the right place. You know, go and be a bit experimental, go in the shower and just get a bit of warmer, you know, where it's nice and private, and try in different places and move around your breast like a clock face. Go to the other breast like a clock face, and then go back to the other side again when you've just done that clock face, and then go back to the other side again. And certainly if you do 2 rounds, you've sort of started the process a little bit, and that might be that the next time you go to the same breast, that the flow starts a little bit more, and that might be a technique that you can just start to get little tiny glistens. That's all you might get. That's absolutely fine. If you don't get anything, that's also fine.
Roxana said that she's pregnant with twins and she's now 32 weeks, and she started massaging her breast because she was concerned she won't be getting any milk, and that she's got small breasts and twins, obviously. So she recently noticed serum in some creamy yellow solution coming from her breast, but it's not even a drop that can be collected. Should I collect it? Is it too early to start hand expressing? Yes, it's too early to start hand expressing. Please don't hand express yet. 37 weeks is the preferred. And I know your babies might come early, but that's a discussion to have with your midwives. But at this stage, we would not be encouraging you to express before 37 weeks.
If you're in labour, you could do a little bit.
Yeah.
If it's early labour, you could do a little bit of hand expressing. If
you're
just a little bit earlier than 37 weeks, then you can do. If you're actually in labour and you're not unable to do it, but if you're more comfortable, you could do some hand expressing in labour, and that's good technique practicing as well.
Yeah, I think it's thinking about. So maybe if you do come in for an induction, that's an opportune time to be doing it, because you're going to have the baby. There is a concern that hand expressing is to do with oxytocin, can put you into early labour, and we don't want to put you in an early labour with twins. So with 32 weeks we don't want that. So yeah, hold off for the moment, and what you're seeing is colostrum, and it is in the breast at this point in time already, but it doesn't need collecting yet. Louise has come back, quicker the better. I'm trying to remember what Louise said, what we were answering there. She's coming in for her induction.
Oh, right. You want a 2-hour labour. We can't arrange that, but
how many should I
it'll be however long it is.
Yeah.
It'll be perfect for you.
Right, so we said that. I'm just going to find the questions again. We went beyond that one. Bear with me, folks. Oh, that's lovely. Paul has come back and said, yes, we've met before. I thought I knew your name. I'm watching you often. Thank you for the advice. She's collected some milk and frozen it.
Well done.
She tried to express, but my daughter is not able to swallow it. I don't know to see. It's quite a long question. I'll just see if I phrase it. She's going to give us a shout if she needs any more help.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely do that. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd love to hear from you.
So Alejandro's come back. He's getting 9 wet nappies, but sometimes he doesn't do a poo in 2 days. Okay, so that might be worth having a look at. I mean, how big are those poos that he does when he does do them? Is he doing really nice big ones? What colour are they? So this is probably worth a conversation. Alejandro, give us a shout and we'll have a chat with you about it.
And don't forget, you can also talk to OBS, Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Services, and also La Leche League.
And that's who the next message is from.
Oh,
and OBS. We've got a message for it. Says, hi Alex and Naomi.
Don't forget us.
These.
We won't forget you.
No, OBS and La Leche, they're out there, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And the Abingdon Baby Cafe.
And the Abingdon Baby Cafe.
All offering fantastic support.
Yeah.
OBS is saying hi to us from them. No, great team effort we are. We're all here to support the mothers of Oxfordshire. Right, that's lovely. All everyone telling us they can still see us. Lisa's come back, pooing and weeing, putting on weight, so hoping it's just a temporary thing. Thank you so much for your advice. Well, that's good news. That's just what we want to hear.
Yeah.
We've got a few more telling us they could hear us when we were struggling.
I've never seen a textbook baby or a textbook labour.
No.
It doesn't happen. It's very individual to you.
Delana's asking us a question. It's a very midwifery question. I'll just point out that this is the infant feeding team. Delana, can I ask you to steer your question to the Ask the Midwife line, please, or your midwife, because you're asking about blood and infection causing a baby to come earlier, because you've had 2 pluses of blood in your urine. I think this is probably a really good question to take to your midwife, if you wouldn't mind. Because it is a specific one to you, so it would be brilliant, Delana, if you wouldn't mind giving them a call and having a conversation about that, if that's all right, rather than us doing it here. Vicky has said her baby feeds for 10 minutes but won't settle for more than 10 minutes before feeding again. She's putting weight on, only lost 2% at day 5, and then by day 12 she was over her birth weight. Just wondering if there's a way to encourage her to feed longer so she'll settle for longer. Compressions, we'll add our compressions back in because I'll get more in her, won't it?
And I would look at your positioning. Can you go a little bit deeper? It might be that she's sort of hyperstimulating your milk, so she's getting lots of lactose, which is very filling and fattening, but it doesn't satisfy babies, so they're constantly looking for for a bit of pudding. So it might be that if you put your baby on a little bit deeper, so look at the latch, see if you can improve the latch. Maybe pull your baby down a little bit further below, rather than being central. Is your baby asymmetrical? And that's much more where it's just tipping over the edge of the nipple, and the chin is really deep underneath. And just see if your baby's got a really big mouthful and that the chin is so close that you can't see the breast between the chin and your baby, so that it's sort of got a double chin, and its nose is up like it's sniffing the air, so that you've got a really, really deep latch, and that will then ensure that they transfer a really good milk supply, and make the next one, and they get the whole feed with fat and everything in, so that they feel satisfied. The other reason why babies might want to feed constantly is because it's not being quite such a positive oral experience. They're not getting their suckling needs met if they're not quite deeply enough on the breast. So if the breast isn't far enough in, their needs aren't being met orally, and sometimes they're just searching for that, and they're not hungry. They've had lots to eat, but they're not hungry, but they just haven't quite had the breast in their mouth far enough, and their cheeks aren't full enough, and they can't use their tongue in the right way. And they're just searching for a little bit more because they just don't feel like they've had what they were looking for. It's like scratching an itch, you know, it's not quite there. So just look at all of those things to see if your baby is being satisfied nutritionally and orally with a better, deeper latch. Just look at it and revisit it again, and just see if you can improve that slightly, and go back to what Alex said a little while ago, which is, you know, to be quite firm and bring your baby firmly towards you. If your baby is being, you know, supported across your chest particularly, or under your arm, bring your baby up to the breast, and make sure that you don't allow your baby just to suck the nipple in to where it thinks it's going to suck, because they will suck before they reach the proper suck point, that little sweet spot. They will start sucking before that, and if you're not sore, they will continue to do that. So just make sure that you've gone past that point and that you are actually right at the little sweet spot where they can get more milk out, because it's deceptive otherwise.
Jill's popped a few questions through. She said, how many meals is it normal for a baby to take? How many meals is it typical for a baby to feed? Well, it depends on how old that baby is to begin with. So when we mentioned earlier, the first feeds we're talking about under a mil, you know, 0.2, 0.3. A baby's stomach is only the size of a cherry. It's absolutely tiny when it's first born. By day 3, it's grown already. It's the size of a walnut. And then by week, we're talking about an apricot. And then by sort of 2 to 3 weeks, up to 4 weeks, we're talking about the size of an egg. You know, and that's
a photograph of that.
Yeah. So it goes up radically. So that goes in line with the milk supply. So as the milk supply increases, the stomach's increasing. They go together. So the milk supply is going up, and the stomach size is going up. So that goes in sort of sync, really. I think whilst Naomi looks for the picture, you asked how long it takes to defrost the milk. It really doesn't take very long at all. You can just leave it to defrost at room temperature, or I mean, if it's colostrum in a syringe, it takes absolutely no time at all. You can just rub it in your hands and defrost it that way. If you need it quicker, if it's a bottle of frozen DB of express breast milk, then under a warm tap or in a jug of warm water is the quicker way of doing it. Making sure that obviously the lid is on nice and tight and no water can go in it. So we'd normally do it so it's balancing in the jug of water, no water coming into the top. You don't want the water to go in.
Sorry for the rustling.
That's all right. And Jill asked also, if a baby doesn't use all the express breast milk in the bottle, do you need to discard it, or can you use it later? I'm afraid actually you can't keep it for too long, because by then there's going to be some two-way flow with the baby, and so there's going to be bacteria from the baby's mouth in the milk, and so we would prefer that you don't use it. So what we'd normally suggest is that you decant from the bottle that you've got your express breast milk into another bottle. Let's say you think your baby's going to take 40. Let's say it normally takes 40, and you put 20 in to begin with, because we never know how much they're going to take. If they're looking for more, you put another 10, and then you put another 10. Much better to do it that way, and then you only discard maybe 5 or so, than to discard a huge amount of milk.
Soul destroying when you've got 100 mils of milk and you give your baby it and it takes 20,
Yeah.
you've got to throw the other 80 mils out. And that's really really soul destroying when you've worked really hard to get it. So, you know, limit the amounts. It is, you know, it's so precious, every drop.
So just decant from one bottle to another, little by little by little, until your baby wants no more.
Okay. So there we are. Can you see that? That's your cherry for the early days, and then it increases day 3 to a little bit more, to the size of a walnut, and then it goes up to about an apricot size by a week, and then by a month it's the size of an egg. So we haven't got big tummies to fill, and remember, it doesn't need filling. I'm sure you said that, didn't you? But it doesn't need filling.
I didn't actually, not on that occasion.
Yeah, it doesn't need filling. Just because it's that big, it doesn't need filling. So, you know, 0.2 ml on day 0 and day 1 is fine, but it has to start increasing like the tummy sizes do. So that, hopefully that just gets you a little bit of an insight, and you can think about, visually thinking about what volumes your baby needs to take or doesn't need to take, which is more to the point.
Vanessa's asked a question about whether express breast milk can go into the fridge, or does it always need to go into the freezer? No, it can go into the fridge. In fact, the storage guidelines are colostrum can be kept at room temperature for 24 hours, and mature milk can be kept at room temperature for 6 hours. And then both of those can go into the into the fridge for 5 days, and then it can go into the deep freeze for 6 months. So I always remember it 6-5-6. So 6 hours for mature milk at room temperature, 5 days in the fridge, 6 months in the freezer. Colostrum's the outlier because that one lasts even longer. It's got so many protective properties, which what a baby needs when they're first born, that actually it's fine at room temperature for up to 24 hours. Once you freeze it though, they do lose some of their protective properties, so do keep it in the fridge after it's been frozen. So hopefully that answers your questions. So Vicky's come back to thank you. Jill's come back, so literally a few minutes. To defrost, yes, it won't take long. I'm trying to think what your question was, which one we were answering there. Katie's asked, one of her nipples is inverted. Will not come out though with coaxing. Will come out with coaxing, I think. How will this affect my ability to breastfeed, and how can I improve this? I'm 25 weeks, but I've always had one inverted. Will this change when I'm breastfeeding?
Quite often does come out once you've started breastfeeding and stays out. It's something that a lot of mums find, is that they've got quite a deeply inverted nipple when before they're pregnant and when they're pregnant, but when they start to breastfeed, the nipple is brought out, and the little band of tissue inside, a ligament inside the breast is loosened when the baby starts to suckle and feed. Sometimes they don't. But you know, remember that your baby doesn't know anything different, so when you present your nipple to your baby, that's all it knows. So you might find that just doing a little bit of stimulation, and if it does come out with stimulation, then your baby will be fine. It will just take what it's given. So don't make too much of a big thing about it. You might find something like a hacker, which is just the breast reliever. Sometimes just putting that on for a few minutes before you breastfeed sometimes just hastens the process up a little bit and can loosen the tissue around the breast if you're very full, and that might help as well. But I just think, suck it and see, as the saying might go, literally. You don't know until you try. So we assume that everybody can breastfeed okay. That's the norm, and everybody will produce milk. That's the norm. So with all the things that you should be doing, the hand expressing, the stimulation, the good feeding, the skin to skin, all of those things help you produce milk and feed your baby successfully. So that's what you should be doing, irrespective of what your anatomy looks like. But get help if you need it.
Yeah, I think it's the whole thing about babies are born to be breastfed, and they deal with what they've got. They've got no idea what a breast is going to be like until they get there. They'll deal with what you've got. So everybody is different.
There's no such thing as flat nipples, being a problem, or big nipples, or little nipples, or inverted nipples. It's just how you are, and your baby will deal with that.
Yeah, because they don't know. Vanessa's come back and said, thank you, fabulous, thanks. And Jill's come back with another question saying, she says, sorry, last one. Don't mind, you can ask as many as you want, no limit. Do you wind straight after a feed, or do they sleep after a feed? Well, when you think about it, why do we wind? We wind because babies are taking in air. The breasts don't have air. So a baby who's gone on well probably hasn't actually got any air to bring up unless that baby's been really crying before you breastfed and may have taken in air then. So really and truly just put your baby in an upright position, give them a cuddle. Don't wait too long for a burp that's never going to come. You know, the whole thing about burping comes from being bottle fed. It is much easier to take in air when you're being bottle fed than being breastfed. So any upright position, give your baby a chance, but don't wait too long. And then if the baby's asleep and you can get them down, many babies won't go down, then good luck. So keep getting down. So
you know, they're all snuggled up and asleep, and then you sort of bash them on the back and wake them up again. So they'll tell you if you've got wind. You'll just pick them up and they'll burp, and then you can put them down again, or they'll pass it through the other end. Which they're very good at.
Although many babies don't like to be put down, do they?
No, they don't. They love being cuddled.
Because babies expect to be cuddled, and Naomi started with that, didn't she? Talking about how babies expect to be cuddled. So that's exactly what
a sling.
Slings are amazing, absolutely life-saving. Well, we haven't got any more questions on here, so
I think we're almost at an hour, aren't we?
3:25.
So
unless anybody wants to come in a quick flurry at the end with any more questions, and there's no limits, Jill, if you've got another one. So.
Otherwise we'll sign out and we'll see you same time next week. And save your questions up. And you know, come back to us and give us some anecdotal things.
Thank you for bearing with us with our ropey start, because we've done this on a mobile. I've got the laptop on my lap. We normally do it around the other way, so apologies for that, but I think we couldn't get on. But anyway, we have got another question. Kirsty's got in at the last minute.
Last one.
So Kirsty is now 38 plus 3. She's put final slog. You are in the final slog, poor love. How many times a day can I hand express? I'm getting quite a bit out, and I've only had 3 goes at it.
Wow, lovely.
Since 37 weeks, but can still easily get 2 meals from each breast. You star. Well, normally 4 times a day is what we normally say. And bear in mind, I think what we haven't covered is that expressing beforehand is fantastic. It gives you that lovely buffer for when your baby's born. But your milk supply is established once that baby is born. So yes, have some, but it's really important, as Naomi's already talked about, getting that milk supply going once the baby comes. Anything you do before the baby comes does not impact on your supply afterwards. So it's absolutely crucial. Even if you end up with loads, don't take your foot off the pedal. Make sure you get that baby feeding, and if that baby's not feeding well, you get expressing in those early days. So 4 times a day, Kirsty, would be the answer to that, and well done you. And if you end up with more than you need, the milk bank would probably love it. If you want to donate to the milk bank, they always like to have colostrum as well. But let's just come back. I think someone's very excited about trying this out in a few months. I'm getting kick lots here. Thanks so much. Brilliant. You'll have fun learning together, because breastfeeding is a learnt skill for you two.
It's a journey.
So, sorry, Kirsty, don't apologise. It was lovely to have your extra question. It was far, your question, should I say. So she's come back saying sorry, and I said thank you. So.
Well done.
I think we're going to sign off now. Thank you very much, one and all.
Have a good week, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.